I hate driving. Yep, always have. When I was a kid growing up, the majority of stuff that would talk about like maturity in young men, this was like back in the '90s, but it was like drinking alcohol and driving a car. So if you drove a car or drunk alcohol, you were a man. So you could be like 15 years old, but as soon as you drive a car, you're basically an adult, or at least you could talk to other adults or something along those lines or whatever. So it was always, but like when I was a kid growing up, and whenever I hear about cars, it was always a car accident, a drunk driving accident, or like later on in life, I learned about, like car problems, like, like automobile based issues under the hood. And but the thing is that, like I said this in another video, I feel like adulthood was ultimately just like people's way of just sort of embracing some good and some power that they thought that they have while blatantly and completely ignoring like all the bad stuff. Like it wasn't until later on in my life I learned what repossession was or repo and stuff like that. Because I remember I used to see people freak out about getting their cars repoed, like on like other shows and stuff like that, and it would be like, I wonder why that is, and they'll say stuff like, oh, that's because they didn't pay for the car. And the thing that as a kid, I used to think it was because, oh, these people just got some keys, drove a car off the lot, and they get in the car, and people who are responsible for the vehicle bring it back. Nobody ever told me anything about how you pay for your car after you buy it. So it's like, what? That's what? So yeah, it just feels like that. It feels like driving is it feels like driving was, it comes with more problems. Like granted, you get a chance to go wherever you want to, but it's like it's like it feels like it has more issues than good things. It's like, because if you get an old car that's not in the best condition, your car might break down a little bit quicker, so you might end up having to buy another one anyway. Or if you get a car that's expensive, you find yourself paying for it a lot. You find yourself paying for it after you buy it a little bit longer. Or it's too much stuff that goes into like it's too much stuff that goes into like just cars in general. But like I don't like driving because, and it's not that I'm a bad driver or even because of the wreck that I had earlier this year, but it's just because as long as I've been alive, I've never really been a huge fan of just like having to watch out for everybody and everything. Like I drive, rear view, rear view, in front of me, rear view, like I'm not a fan of. I play video games, I watch TV, I like being inside a lot. I like being able to just be in a stable area, stay in one focal point of vision, and that's it. So yeah, I don't like driving. I think, which is why another thing too is like me not liking driving has made me question a lot of things. Why is everything so far away? The nearest place for me, like the nearest store, is about at least a good 3 hour walk from me. The town center is be at least about a good 4 hours. You know what I mean? Like somebody brought this up to me a long time ago. Like I remember I was talking about on Facebook, hey, it feels like the reason why we are getting fat is because food wasn't always supposed to taste good, and when we started making food taste good, we started eating it in abundance. And somebody was like, another thing that we could say is we do a lot more sitting and not moving than we used to do back in the day. So that's probably another reason why we got fat, and it made sense to me. We do devote a lot of our time to eating copious amounts of food that is really good and sitting, so we don't really work out as often as we used to back in the day. And thinking about driving and the fact that depending on how long you drive, you're literally sitting in one spot and still moving. So it's like I feel like it also kind of contributes to us, our weight, not necessarily our weight gain, but like the society of sedentary Cecil. There's a word that begins with the letter S that means like staying, not being able to move or stay still or whatever. I just can't think of it right off. Cecil, Sessil. I don't know, but Yeah, man. That's some of the stuff that I think about though. But I do know that I hate driving. Like, why is everything far away though? That's the thing that really annoys me. Is the fact that, like, if you lived in a community right now, if you lived in a residential community, the nearest store is like maybe a good 10 to 15 minutes that way in a vehicle. And it's like, why? Why does it have to be that far away? Why isn't there anything close that I could just walk to? Like, what if I don't have a vehicle? You're basically telling me if I don't have a vehicle, I'm SOL. You know what I mean? And, you know, and don't even get me started on public transportation. Like, I can't stand that either because depending on where you go, public transit is ridiculously unreliable. You will find yourself waiting at least a good hour or two to get to where you need to go to. There was this, a long time ago, I used to know a guy, he didn't have a vehicle, so he used public transit to get everywhere. So he was oftentimes very late. And he couldn't say, oh, the bus missed me. Now, you probably might be saying to yourself, well, why don't he just ask for somebody to give him a ride? Like, this is Louisiana. We shame people for asking for things in general. But also, he didn't know anybody who would give him a ride. So it's like he had to use public transit. Like, you don't use public transit isn't the first option, if you live in like a small town or whatever like that. It's usually plan Z. If you see somebody taking public transit at this point in time, it's probably because every other option has just been exhausted. Okay? So, obviously he was late for work enough times, and he got fired for it. These things happen. But it's just like, it really just made me realize, like, if everybody had jobs that they walked to, or it was at least within reasonable distance of, there would probably be a lot less firings. We live in a world right now where it feels like the more advanced we become, the more difficult everything gets. So, like, now that we have vehicles, everything is within driving distance instead of within walking distance. Now that we have the internet, there's certain things that you have to have the internet to do. There's certain things that you have to do that requires specifically having the internet. So it's like, if you don't have the internet, you SOL. We don't. It's like one of the few things that I can say from from the bitter old crotchety old guy perspective is that, like, we don't have a lot of options. Like, the world isn't backwards compatible. Things aren't, for people who probably like won't be able to get the resources that they need to do things. They're just SOL. There's no analog way of doing things, which is, I think, is ridiculous and annoying because it's like there should be a perfect balance between yesteryear and the future. And the fact that everything is so far away that we can't even walk to certain places is kind of ridiculous. It's kind of a ridiculous take on, how society is functioning. It's just like, like, I do like the fact that we still have libraries, for books and things like that. But it's like, like, if we could do something like that, with libraries for books, then what's stopping us from doing that with other things as well? Like, I feel like one of the things that politicians should be doing, and I know I always go back to politics when I talk, but I feel like one of the big things that politics should be doing is trying to figure out ways to help out people who can't access certain resources, and maybe create communities where things are much more tight knit and things are much more within reasonable distance. You shouldn't have to, like, I shouldn't have to walk maybe about a good 3-4 hours that way to go to the nearest store or to the town center. You know what I mean? I should be able to just maybe, like, I don't know, a good 10 to 15 minute walk at the least. Like, I'll probably like do a nice hour walk because the Lord knows I need it. But the fact is that, like, 3 to 4, come on, man, that's literally an eighth or sixth of a whole day on foot going one way. So you can only imagine, like, 3 to 4 going and coming is 6 to 8 hours. So that would literally mean that in order for me to go somewhere, if I didn't have a vehicle, now you probably might be saying to yourself, why don't you just use a rideshare app like Lyft and Uber and all these other things? And it's like, that's fine and all, but once again, that goes back to if I ain't had the resources. So it's like, if I don't have money or a vehicle, I have to walk places. So it's like, once again, the question should always be, what can we do? Maybe 2022 is a election year, so you're gonna have a lot of politicians like trying to get elected and stuff like that. And I know I'm just some dude on the internet, nobody really cares about or whatever. But I do feel like if anybody is gonna take anything I say seriously, take it this seriously. What would you do to help out the people who don't have the resources to do certain things? And specify. What about the person who doesn't have enough money to, buy access to a rideshare app? What are you gonna do about that? What about the person who, can't buy food? What are you gonna do about that? You know what I'm saying? They'll probably say something along the lines of, we have such, and it's like, they don't work. They don't work, bro. What are you gonna do that's different? You see the issues that's going around with poor people. You have to help out the poor, help out the people who can't do things. But yeah, I hate driving. We should really find, as a society anyway, we do need to like establish more communities dedicated to being on foot, walking places, and doing that. Because a society that walks is a society that's always going to be in shape. A society that's always going to be in shape is going to be a very striving and thriving society. I mean, that's the way I see it anyway. But that's just me. Love and peace. Y'all have a good one, and be safe out there. Also, I love you.